Okay, I can't see the streaming link. We'll just figure that out. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our proposition, the SSAA proposition, which is a faculty research seminar. And our speaker for today is Aruna Bhardwaj, who is going to talk about the dilemma in research design, journeys of urban childhoods. Now, Aruna is an architect with a master's in Ekistics from Jamia Millia Islamia. She was the co-founder of Vertex Design and for over 2 decades, and where she was involved with the conceptualization, design, end-to-end execution of various projects in the public as well as the commercial sector, ranging from hospitality, organized retail, residential, and of course commercial. And some of her major clients were Standard Chartered Bank, IDBI, and Rajasthali and Khadi showrooms, MSMSII Museum in the City Palace, and Jaigarh Gallery in Jaipur. She's been teaching since 2011, first as a visiting faculty and then as a full-time faculty. And she is currently enrolled in SSA as a PhD candidate, and her topic is child-friendly urban spaces. She's also the building construction track head, the 4th-year design studio director, and teaches a number of subjects across the bachelor's and master's program. She's also the coordinator, one of the coordinators for the mid-level SSA faculty training, orientation, and research program at SSA. So without much delay, hand you over to Aruna. Aruna, you ready?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you to the PhD program. Thank you, Vibhuti. Thank you, Radha, Himanshu, Suruchi. And yeah, I can see Jayanti also. So, of course, I must thank first and foremost before I start, Vibhuti Sachdev. Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev is my supervisor. And my co-supervisor is Dr. Ajit Kalyat. And I must thank them for being so supportive and encouraging, because honestly, I have enrolled since last year. So I consider myself as a young researcher. And this is a space which is something that I am still, as the topic suggests, I am still exploring and still enjoying getting lost and having all sorts of questions, having all sorts of dilemmas. And in fact, I must give credit to Vibhuti for actually telling me, Aruna, why don't you bring all your questions? Because my conversations with her are all sorts of dilemmas that I just bring it out and unroll. And she says, I think this is a good space. And so I will not, without any much ado, I will jump into what I want to say. And I'm looking forward for to suggestions. Yeah. So I have written Dilemma of Research Design. And the space, like Radha said, was journeys of child-friendly spaces. It's a larger area of study where I'm not even finalized exactly where I'm going. But I am seeing that as a journey of different children of childhoods. And I'm seeing it also as a journey for myself. So that's why for this propositions, the term journey, spelling is wrong, journey, I will change it quickly. So journeys of childhood. Yeah, so why I'm saying urban, because urban cities is something, is a place that we are, cities are fundamental to economic and cultural development. And the city is It is by far, and even more so today, they are the place which is aspirational and specifically for what we are talking about um, uh, in our country. The city is something that is a phenomena, and I'm not saying urban right now because I will get to that phenomena, but I'm just talking about where where this whole idea and why this looking carefully at children is because we are part placed in the city, and the fact that cities themselves derive power, and cities are powerful. So first I just want one to look at the fact that growth, um, cultural development, diversity, power, all are, is the space where which is associated in the city space. And when we are looking at this fact of the city, there is this characteristic of the city, and which is specifically one I just want everybody to look at it from where we are in a place like India. All our cities, they have that fragmented character, and that is the point that has been kind of playing in my mind, because the discourse of child friendly spaces is something that is relevant to it has been there, it has taken come to prominence even more so today, and has been there for the past decade, and has been, and of course concern of children has been part of it. But specifically for our cities, if you are looking at it, so their spatial organization actually reflect a sort of fragmentation, a sort of diversity, a sort of a very very distinct it's like a melting pot of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different people from different regions, what we saw during COVID times. And so I've just placed that UNICEF's report, A Fair Chance for Every Child, the State of World's Children 2016. And it's not a new document, there's work done on it, but I just wanted to, this statement is very poignant. If the soul of a society can be judged by the way it treats its most vulnerable members, then by a similar measure, a society's future, its long-term prospects for sustainability, growth, stability, and shared prosperity can be predicted by the degree to which it provides every child with a fair chance. And that saying essentially is that we why what we when we say cities map, in a way this is this is the relationship, and this is the relationship to the larger goal of sustainability and the larger idea of what the children are for us. We are the child is the future of man, child is father of man, and cities, of course, map the future of humankind. So, what one starts looking at is, do you think the cities need to be responsible for us, for the children, and to explore, to experience, to learn, to really be what our future is? And the reason why I have chosen the images, these are images that, okay, one they the fact that this whole melting pot, the diversity that I was talking about, this is something that I am actually really mulling about, and rightly so. This is part of my dilemma, and this is part of the dilemma of my research design. So what what really I bring over here right now is um, something that Tim Gill has said, and it is has become a part of my consciousness is that children are an indicator species for the city, and their presence. And in fact, he's written youth also, though I think I'm not going to be able to look at that in detail, because of different ages and backgrounds, with and without their parents, uh, in numbers, is a sign of the health of a human habitants. And these are, many pictures are taken by me, and there are some, of course, I've given the credits. But the fact that we stay in Gurgaon, and Gurgaon has been a case study for me and my co-researcher, and we have been looking at my co-researcher Juhi Malpani, please, I must tell her name. And we have been looking at the way children function, or observing, mapping how and what children are doing, and how they exist in the spaces. And there seems to me a sort of, again, this is another dilemma, that the fact that there is the the realm of planning and the realm of architecture space, they exist in very different ways. And hence, when we start tackling, there seems to be a dilemma. So I just, my initial thing has started with the idea of from the city to the children. So what does the city mean to children of different backgrounds? And here I have kept, I have added this, it wasn't there last year, but I've added that mapping journeys of urban childhood. And some of the larger questions that I'm seeing over here is, how does the urban space affect the psychology of children? Built environment envisaged as the nurturer of children, children's relationship with the city. Now, these all in itself have a lot of uh, questioning, lot of research, but there is, since my research design is not finalized as yet, but these are the questions that one is dealing with. And if one is saying, because if I elaborate a little bit, the fact, what the fact that what is the association of a child with the city is very important as to what in the future is that child when they become an adult, and how they are going to deal with the space that they inhabit, whether they will take ownership, whether they are going to that person is going to have some empathy, has going to have any feelings or emotions for the space. So this is a very poignant question, because if to answer. And of course, we are very, very, from the background that we are, middle class, upper middle class, a lot of, we are very, very particular about how we want our children to be, and the environment that we are giving to our children. So this whole, this sort of an environment that we are kind of, at this moment, we are obsessed to the point of stifling our children, I feel personally. But as Vibhuti always points out, so now I'm starting to just place things on the table, and I'm trying to remove myself from this whole idea of what I think is right or wrong. So I'm hence this, how the how does, I'm keeping it at that whether the environment needs to be a nurturer, and how, the larger question that I've already talked about is the urban space. Well, how does this affect the psychology of children? So psychology of children is also, I've left it at psychology. There was this point when this is actually looking at well-being, and then well-being as a point which goes into the physical well-being, mental well-being. But if one is physically well, then psychologically, um, of course, psychologically, a person will be feeling better. So Now, just coming to understanding what what my process has been, and then realizing that we the way I am in, and that whole, so dilemma is a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives. And dilemma actually comes from the Greek word, which is a double proposition. So originally it was a technical term of logic, but today we are using it as a term where we do not have a solution. And that actually is my state presently, and I'm opening it out here because the way the work that I've been doing, um, there are all sorts of directions, but each direction there is the foreseeable final. Now this is my journey, not the children's journey. Foreseeable future is something that is not very clear. And good space, bad space, when one is doing one's PhD, I don't know. So lot of perplexity, lot of confusion, lot of complexities, because as you can see, as I'm putting it out here, I'm thinking of multiple different children. uh, if I may elaborate a little bit, I'm thinking about, you know, quoting Paul Keedwell, that environmental behavior research, uh, specifically for children, needs to pay attention to characteristics of the setting, while acknowledging that children come from different backgrounds. Children develop based on their age, sex, socioeconomic status, ethnicities, and culture. And so this in itself becomes a big dilemma to how do you tackle this thought, and then you start tackling the idea of where one started from. um, so I've come, after I've said this, so I've come back to the question of what is research. And the fact that um, quoting Theodorsson, is that an honest attempt to study a problem systematically to add to man's very, I must say, very biased, I will say, human beings' knowledge of of a problem may be regarded as research. The dictionary meaning is studious inquiry or examination, investigation or experimentation, aimed at discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of accepted theories or law in the light of new fact, or practical applications of such new or revised theory. In fact, research has uh, one can go on into it. I didn't want to go into the details exactly of it, but just to, I wanted to come back that one is looking at an addition of new knowledge, looking at something which is deeper, and bringing something new to light is how I am looking at it. Hence this dilemma of the way I want to proceed, and hence this dilemma of what my research design would be. And mind you, that research design per se itself is a actually a next later on stage. So so there is this, because exactly what one's topic is, and before you come back to it, so there is a stage of complete and utter confusion, where one is just looking at this option or that. So, and the definition of research design is also very daunting, because when one looks at it and then says, okay, it's a methodical, well organized procedure utilized by a researcher or a scientist. And this term keeps coming as a scientist, which for us architects and who've been in this whole process of creative process, which is an iterative process which goes up, down, left, right, center, is to carry out a scientific study becomes very daunting, because honestly, as far as my this PhD is concerned, I have not outgrown my habits, and it's like, so if one is looking at um, if one is looking at a pre-planned, well thought out, pre-selected research type in order to come up with a error-free, authentic conclusion. So that is something which we are which again becomes a daunting thing, because how do you choose what is the path that one needs to take? And points of research, really, there's a lot of material on the there are books. I've also looked at Kothari research and methodology and things like that. And then when one goes into this space, is again a point where one says, do I need to really look at it, or do I just want to come back and start doing some deep thinking? So this thing over here, and one of the best suggestions by Vibhuti was that just stop, just stop, just don't even do any work on your PhD work. Just read something else, think about something else. And which I took a so that's a break, and I'm going to come back to that, and then I'm going to proceed. But right now I'm just kind of opening my whole thing and laying out there. And so then these other dilemmas is something that I just want to bring over here, because the question of urban, and I'm honestly, this dilemma of keep urban or not keep urban is something that is, when one starts deeply looking at what is the story that one wants to say. So urban is, the definitions are very loose. Okay, in our country we have this definition which says a minimum number of households, and we will say they are not non-agricultural, engaged in non-agricultural activities, and has an administrative boundary. And this probably definition was something that worked earlier across the world. In fact, definition of urban is actually not definitive at all. It is as per the United Nations Population Division, it is urban includes a certain activity, and in fact it actually also includes, and in some countries the fact that the streets are paved is urban, so that becomes a criteria for being urban. And some to simply just list it as urban. So if one is looking at, and why I'm really thinking about this is because the question for me is looking at the childhood spent in an urban setting. And I know this, and but when I'm actually deeply, I start moving into this space, the question becomes, what is urban? And then hence the word urbanity seems to be popping out every time. But in fact, urbanity is nothing but being of a city, or of being a urban space, or also the quality of being urban and urban, which actually translates into another thing, which is very interesting, because it talks about a style, grace, urbanity, and a clear sense of identity. So this sort of urbanity is actually about a person, and it's a reflection, a quality, and it's a larger idea of uh, a state of being, which essentially has to do more with the with the idea, with the idea of being sophisticated, of being a person. Earlier it was like a man about town. Over there also there were restrictions. Women were not encouraged. So in the 18th century, 17th century, where the cities, the idea, the word, or urbanity or urban came about, is was a person who had diverse experiences. So one might start by thinking that in that light, um, today we all today we all are part of that urbanity and urban uh, um, situation. So what so but as soon here I'm just now I'm because now I'm doing a backtrack. So I'm going a backtrack. So this is some of the work that has been done, and I'm going back into my into the past. My explanation might not be very precise, but so some of the work I have headed as an elective studio faculty was mapping of a certain type of uh, urban childhood, the Banjara community, and lower income group settlement that was um, that has which was a temporary settlement, which was a residual of your built, you know, the construction sites that have taken place, and that was a residual that some of these people who were working around the area. This is where our college is, Sector 55. This is the area I also stay quite close by, Sector 54 and Sector 53. So this was located in Sector 53. So there is a thriving Banjara community, and the we where there was about 8-10 of us, the students and me, and we kind of went in, talked to the thing, and we were looking at what was the activity that the children, what was the daily routine of the children over there. And we kind of mapped out certain very simple questions, whether we what are the different age groups, whether they are what do they do. And of course the our preconceived ideas, or what we thought is right, do they go to school, do they not go to school, and the questions. And because it's like so one can see, are the children are the parents comfortable. Now this is a very interesting question, because it comes with a sort of biases. Now I can see this, because um, parental anxiety is something that one is dealing with, and parents comfortable in letting their children. Now and that's a question which becomes kind of irrelevant for to ask these people, because they have no boundaries. So there is no boundary where we say, acha, you cannot go there. And accidents on minor, this is some data that the students dug out, is not a reflection of just this. It's also a reflection of the population, the demographics of Gurgaon changing. And so that's why the when I came and when I started, I knew it all. And now when I look at it, when I'm looking at work over here, the question starts happening, that the dilemma of asking what is the right question. And who so we are saying, do they, are they able to walk? So all these, and I think these are studies that we all have done, each of us, and in some capacity or the other, we have done the fact that the streets are the children are not able to cross the streets. So the children accompany their mother to work. Many times these children are left alone. Girls, a child of 7, 8, 10-year-old will be taken. There is a school nearby in this area, they will be taken off. But at the end of the day, the larger question today, if one thinks about it, when you talk about education and skilling, so these questions, I'm right now in this space where the questions that one needs to ask are becoming really problematic. Is this the right question, or is this, or both seem to be wrong? So this is what I'm saying. This is this is part of what, when we were trying to understand where all do the children go, and we did a mapping exercise. And in fact, there was no limit. With so unattended, the children um, go, a 12-year-old child and a 5-year-old child and a group of them will go 5 to 6 kilometers uh, uh, from at a distance of their house. They go for, there are these products that they are selling, which they get from Rajasthan. So there are different locations also, they have placed this. So, and they are working, and and they are living, so the questions one needs to ask also are now becoming very actually at loss. So the dilemma of questioning is what I wanted to bring out from here. um, um, the earlier uh, and I think in this, yeah, I've given the, so this again, I've done this mapping technique is based on based on mobility mapping and flow diagrams that are usually done for family tracing and social integration of separated children in times of strife. And this has become part of studies. UNICEF is also shared uh, um, has referred to this. And this was an exercise with the student Neetu Sani, who actually did her dissertation, and I was her guide. And later on, with Juhi Malpani and Neetu, we published this paper. And it was a very, very interesting exercise where we looked at the children, a bunch of children who used to come from Ghata Gaon, come to Ansal University, and at 5 o'clock, and they would stay here for 2 hours. There was a class that they would attend, and that was a program that used to take place over here in our university, which is now Sushant University. Sorry, and and then we walked in the evening at 7 o'clock when it's become dark. So we walked back with them, and we mapped the whole route. And there were such interesting points that we saw that what do they say? They were pointing out things like the pavement is broken. हम जब गर्मी में 5 बजे आते हैं, तो 5 बजे हमको छाया नहीं मिलती है, हम तो धूप में आते हैं. And the route was a little longer. And very interestingly, if you see at point 3 and 4 and 5, they have taken a detour to avoid traffic, because if you went straight where you can see 3, there is a lot of traffic that at still is there. It's evening time, people from offices, there is all housing societies over here. And then they cross over here. And in fact, they said, actually तो अगर आप लोग नहीं होते तो हम तो this Aravallis at the back of Ansal Sushant University now. So हम तो उधर से भी चले जाते जब छोटे बच्चे हमारे साथ नहीं आते. So a bunch of them aged from 14 to 4 walked back, and we walked with them, and it was a pretty long route. And they identified, and the route that they took was very interesting, where they mapped the fact that there were certain landmarks that they mapped, and they identified, and together very carefully they crossed. The Rajesh Pilot Road is a highway. It is our extension road, very high traffic speeds, and but together very carefully. And I cannot so there is a lot of learning that happens. And they were very, very particular, and they would stop at some time. There were these landmarks that they have. Sometimes they played that temple what we are talking about as marked 8. They played, there is a lake which is of course dried. They said sometimes when there is water, they come and play over there. So it was a very, very interesting sort of an exercise. So this, oh, sorry, I actually explained most of it on that, on the earlier slide. And also we asked them to just describe or draw what they like in the city. And interestingly, if you see, it is all on the route of on their route where they traveled all the way. And some of the key findings was that uh, uh, there was lack of vigilance measures, dark narrow streets. So people could walk. The road quality was poor, but that did not deter people from being on the street. So and I've already said it has strong social roots. So this is an exercise which is very relevant, and this is something that as a methodology I would like to employ in my this thing in my PhD. But after I cross the dilemma of who are the children I'm going to map. So there is this there's a lot of research that has been happening in the environmental psychology, and the fact about that we for children, the space, and it's not for children only, honestly. Environmental behavior actually for even for adults, uh, the built space, it's something that we agree on, but there is no acting on it. So children, when kept in a child friendly environment, that is one that delights, inspires, educate, can be competitive and productive. Yeah, but I just want to come back to a dilemma. And there is this other research which starts saying that free risky play, which can be observed in several mammalian species, has an evolutionary function, as it offers the opportunity to uh, learn life skills, to master age adequate challenges, to manage fears. So this, I think so the it's very interesting when one is doing this literature review, when we are talking about a healthy environment, and a healthy inhabitant is a person who cycles to school. Children cycle to school. They are so there are roads, and there are cycle tracks, and then there are schools which are within the vicinity. And this is some so we this is a part of our research that we have been doing with we've been working with GMDA, and with Dr. Ajit and Vibhuti and Juhi and I. And we have looked at it, and we've been talking about the idea of design and distance, a better design and a reduction in distance. But the question is, then the dilemma over here is, are we doing the right thing? Is that the direction to go? Or like the discussions we have been having, and I have to Dr. Vibhuti, she has been having, is stop, don't get a bias in, drop that bias. So to drop the bias and not make an opinion and then take a decision is another dilemma. So so here we are. So the dilemma is, and even around our residence, even while we are locked in, while we were locked in and our children were locked in. And so construction site very close to my own house in the city, I mean, are just stepping out, these children are freely roaming, they are playing. So is this a risk in today's pandemic? Is this, are they at risk? Are they getting sunlight? I think so again, a bias creeping in. But the question is, what is a risk? Again becomes a dilemma. Is this good play, bad play, risk play? So this becomes a dilemma. um, After this, I just want to come back to one of these areas, because looking at looking at what how to so we've been researching on this idea of how to make the change, how to bring the change about. And so the statistics of crime, the issue of anxiety is also the correlated, and this is within our PhD discussions. We also discuss this fact of, how anxious we are today, and how that affects our environment. And so stranger danger is a big thing, and these are questions which are to the Ghata Gaon people, who honestly let their children travel, walk around 3-4 kilometers, but attended by the elder sibling, who's at 12 years of age, is supposedly mature enough to understand what the dangers are. And so these questions were like, yes, we let them go to the market. Do they play outside the house? Yes, no, everything. So though some things might be skewed, because if you see 60% they are saying, but honestly all of them were playing outside. There was no issue about that. But when we had done this study, we had also done a interrelated study at Malibu, with the children of Malibu. In fact, one can guess what the answers were. At dark, they are not allowed out. There were all sorts of things. And but the facts, and the facts are this, that there is crime, and it is there. And the fact is also there, though many researchers shout from rooftops that many of the crimes that are done on vulnerable groups are done by people who are known to them. So the stranger danger seems to be is a space. But why I'm really elaborating on this and meandering in this space, because actually this whole journey, I've got these spaces where I'm just in that space, roaming around and then coming back. And I think there is this correlation. There is a correlation which I'm searching for, and I'm not found out. And the fact children's safety is an issue. So bottom line, children's safety is an issue. But how does it translate into what we build, how we build a house, how we build a street, how we build a neighborhood, how we build a um, city? So this is something that is the dilemma at the moment. Okay, there are okay. Coming back to this question, this is like, of course, for children, if we need to prioritize children in policies, we need to add trees. So this is Tim Gill's book, and I kind of picked it up from Urban 95 webinar presentation just recently that took place with the Bernard Lear Foundation, and just presenting what he has put in that, just as is. And if one actually looked at it, it could very well translate. It's about making a better city. It is about making a resilient city. It is about um, a sustainable city. It's about, all these things. And then at the end, there is that you think from the child's eye view. So then what happens of risk play? So do we come down to that the child's eye view, or do we want the child to come to our eye view? So that is the dilemma. And so when I'm talking about the crime and we're talking about making the policy, so we have of course worked on this, and the idea of what all are the policies that really target children. As you can see, they do not translate into policies which really affect our built environment. And so we have integrated child development services, improving infant young feed, Aapki Beti Hamari Beti, which is talking about getting, and even the idea of food, providing nourishment for children and an incentive for them to come to school. So that an integrated child protection scheme. And now we are working. Now we are working on the idea of child-friendly building laws. But till 2000, even in the model building bylaws 2016, the Town and Country Planning Organization did really looked at the children. So for the architecture, so we have this bylaws which go for architecture, and so over there you are talking about just a handrail or facilities which are as per the height of children. And then there are these development city plans, and there are lots now, Bhubaneswar and all, as a child friendly city plan, and conversations, and lot of, in Pune, Bernard Lear Foundation, they're working on the idea of having streets which are child friendly. So this, now the dilemma over here is, okay, I'm at this stage where I thought, okay, let's develop a theoretical framework that guides contextual child-friendly urban built environment policy, which addresses the complexity of scale and diversity of childhood. Okay, this, as one can easily see, is all the dilemmas put together as my aim. So, because the complexity of scale and diversity of childhood, they itself are a very, very deep dive and understanding. And the fact that the environment, the built environment is the tool of implementation, the policies, they really need to be looked at as well. And we are, in fact, working on it for the social infrastructure that we are helping GMDA work out. And there's some very interesting ideas that we have been proposing. So that is one thing that is there. But as a personal journey, and when I'm looking at where one is going with it, I'm at a place where all my questions, all my choices are there, and I'm at that really space where to go this way, to go that way, which one to take deeper, then come back, identify my research question. So this is where I am at, and yeah, that's the end. Yeah.
Thank you, Aruna. Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to. We've run a little bit over, but we'd like to invite and request people now to ask questions or give comments and feedback for Aruna, as she is. This is also her PhD. I'd like to reiterate that. So anything that people can contribute. And if people could please now turn their videos on, that will be great.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Hi, Aruna. So thank you for this presentation, and I know broadly about your research interest because we have been discussing and in meetings with Vibhuti ma'am, and we've been discussing a lot also. So also my question is also linked to those discussions which you are always anyway you're familiar with, is that when we're saying all these things like the meaning of words, the meaning of the terminologies, be it urban or gaon or village, or the idea of ideal childhood, or age group, meaning of different age group, meaning of hygiene. So they are very, very different in different contexts. They're very different in even in one place like Gurgaon. There's this multiplicity. There's so many varieties and so many meanings, and it's very difficult to say which one to pick, which one is the ideal definition of all these things. So clearly we don't know the meaning of those words. That is one. Second, also the idea of time. It's not linear like a clock, and it's also very relative. Access to cooking water, is the time is zero for me, but it's not. It's 1 hour for some other person who is living just next door. In after 1 kilometer is probably 2 hours. So all these things are there. So how do you see these concerns in your research methods? I mean, how do you plan to address these points of this meaning of these words are not defined, the idea of time? Because when we pick a place like Gurgaon, or any place in Indian context, more or less, we have this multiplicity, and I think it's good that we are addressing all these things. Yeah, I think that's my question. Yeah.
Quickly, I think, Piyush, I would first and foremost say thanks a lot for identifying and stating the meaning of time. I think that is something that I have missed. So thank you for that, because I'm going to incorporate that in. and that all adds to the complexity, rightly so. So hence I think so, my how I need to measure, I have not identified my framework as yet. I have not identified my methodology, because at the moment there has only been a linear process, and the linear process will not work here, is very, very evident. Hence, these questioning is happening. Hence, I am in that space, and the uh, the the point over here and the challenge one is facing is that uh, we are we are in a process of a sort of scientific research which anybody else, so there are certain steps that need to be taken, and maybe not a conclusion, but at least uh, a new sort of knowledge needs to be or a new thought needs to be added or unearthed. And for that, like, absolutely right, you're saying need to draw certain common threads by on the nodes on which I can judge or take assess the different sort of urbanity and the different sort of children in these urbanities. So the question is, should I take the ones the as the different urbanities? If I'm now actually saying it out loud, within the city itself there'll be like these 10 urbanities, and first defining those urbanities, and then looking at the children, and then defining their diversities and doing a mapping exercise. I think that in itself is a very interesting thing, but I'm still mulling over it.
Yeah, thank you, Aruna. We all are struggling with it, and we'll get through.
Yeah.
Thanks, Piyush. Any other questions? Anyone else?
The point is, if anybody questions me, I'm going to give them back a question. So I think nobody's questioning, because all the questions have been laid out on the table here. So, but
No.
yeah, please.
Aruna, hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I'm just adding to not adding, but
Yeah.
moving from what Piyush really said. Uh, when it comes to designing for children, the pertinent component is the memory, and emotions comes out of memory, and the expressions comes out of memory. But the first and primary thing is creation of those memories. And creation of those memories will only take place amongst the children. The parents cannot create memories for them, or they can only aid, they can only support. They can take them to different places so that they can create their own memories. So, in that whole process of your research, where you are looking at all these complexities, you are looking at the difference between urbanity and urbanism, and you are looking at various expressions, plus the problems of devising your research, and then your aim is to come out with a tactical framework which guides and governs planners, designers to come out with those kind of child-friendly spaces. But the question lies here that whether those, even after you create that framework, even after you create all those positive points for planners to come out with that kind of design, will the children be able to create those kind of memories or not? Because whether in a good situation or in a bad situation, children are far more better than adults. They can find their own niche to be happy in whatever the state is, because they don't understand the worldly matters that much. What they understand is their own age group, their expressions, their feelings, that 10 different people, 10 different children will feel exactly. And that's where they create memories. And when they exclude themselves from this worldly matter and try to find those niche area, they create those kind of expressions, feelings, emotion, and then when they grow up, they want to go back to those memory lane and then say, this is what we used to do here, this is what we used to do that there. And that's where the transformation of the place takes place. So I think when you're devising a strategy for and creating that kind of framework to go on to that scale, memory is a pertinent component, and all the in several of my mentoring sessions with thesis students, final year BR thesis students, I tell them that if any project is there, whether it is a school or it's a playground or it's a mall, everybody creates a memory. The difference is children are more frivolous in their creation than the adult, because adults watch their steps, adults do a lot of other exercises to restrain themselves from hurting others, but children, they don't feel that. So I think in your framework, if memory is one of the components which I thought that it's missing in your study, probably you picked up the emotion and the expression line, but memory is something which is the base for expressions and creation. So if you can pick up any one timeline or any one stream or thread of memory, and then link it with your framework, that will really help to understand how the spaces could be designed. Because no matter how much ever you give better spaces to children for freedom of expression or playfulness or whatever it is, if the child is not able to create the memory that this place is beautiful, then the place fails. That is where, so in child friendly design strategies, the design failure analysis is this point where we, as a planner or an adult, we forget to insert that memory part, that this place is going to create great memory for the children, and this is how it's going to go. So it's equivalent to what the planners currently are doing, not involving the users in planning the city and then simply planning it and then say, see, this is how we made beautiful places for you, but the users don't want it, or the users are not able to create that kind of memory. So that is
Yeah.
one expression I wanted to share.
Yeah. No, it's very valid point what you're saying, Himanshu. The idea, but when the exercise that we have done, when we were doing with the children earlier, and which I now I'm will be definitely making it part of my research. The drawings that they do is a memory mapping exercise, and when they have identified that mandir, and they identify the lake, and then they identify the tree that they drew, and is a place which in the daily routine they do stop at these places. And so that journey, until unless they are allowed to, the point over here is the memory would be made if only if we are letting them out in the different parts of the city, whether and even at the edge of the house. If all the children's memory are only inside the house, then there is going to be a very static sort of a memory. So until unless that opportunity is created where multiple memories can be made, and that is only by multiple sort of experiences, until as we are able to give them those experiences, and that experiences are not something. Now the question is, the dilemma over here is, how designed is the experience? Or we that there is this whole the discussion that an adolescent child earlier, when these cities are being made earlier, at any suburb town, there is that edge, there would be that little wooded area, there is this and children would go without the idea of keep getting space. An adolescent kid and their parents or the adult, they require space. Are we giving them that space, and how do we give them that space? It is and when you give them the space, then they are able to make that memory, because they can have an experience without your presence, and that is a
So,
special memory.
if I can take one more minute to address, counter argue on that fact. Uh, uh, it, as a designer, as a planner, who are we to give them that space? Because this is exactly what we are thinking, that if we give them that space, they will be able to create. But if we purely take it from the children's perspective, children will create their spaces on their own. It is just the designers and the planners have to intervene, in not intervene but observe that how they are creating spaces on their own. And when that happens, we'll be realizing that what we were doing was perhaps not the way, or was completely in its falsity, and then we have to move away from that and just simply be in that state of observer.
You're,
And when
you're
that happens, the whole the whole exercise of what children really needs comes into picture, and then we create and we give them, because we were first the observer, and then we understood the necessity, and then after understanding the necessity we planned. We can't plan then say that this is what is required and then be the observer. I mean, this is what I think. But maybe, I mean, I'm not the researcher in
No,
this
you're
segment.
absolutely right. And that is
You
the
are,
question,
so
because as soon as we start addressing, the question is, do you address the built environment, or do you address psychological, mental issues of parents and their hyper over protective anxieties, the anxieties that lead them to become overprotective. So do you address that, or do you address, so the question is that is also, you're rightly so, do you address over design, or do you address the idea of having letting them you know explore certain things which have an element of risk? That was what I actually that one slide that I had put, the idea of when like a I was like on this path of, we have to design better for the children, sensitive for the children, plan for them, give, and then at this thing, and then you're seeing and you see the results around you, and then you start questioning, is that the right way to go? I mean, so that is where one is at, and very rightly so. These are questions right now that I'm dealing with.
thanks, Arun. I think
Yeah. No,
many
I have
more people
valid
have many
point.
more
I've noted
questions.
it down.
But many more people may have more questions. I don't want to take up the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Himanshu,
I think
for that
I spoke
extended
too much.
discussion. Yeah, we're a little over time, but maybe just we only managed to get 2 questions in, so I would hate to leave it. If there's someone who's pressing. So Juhi has a comment. Just a moment. She says that we need to enable children to make their space. As of now, vehicles and ornamental parks have taken over the nooks and corners they were making into their own initially. So, yeah, the urban level, I think she's talking. So I think Tanaya had wants to come in, and maybe Sachin. Yeah, Tanaya, please.
Yeah. Hi, Aruna.
Hello.
Very intriguing presentation.
Hi. Tanaya left.
I think maybe
She
she
joined
may have
back.
got
She
disconnected.
joined
It
back.
was a bit.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi.
Network
I'm back.
issues. Yeah, great.
Network issues, yes. So very interesting presentation. Just one thought on this. Just I was imagining how I have been as a child, and how the scope of the urban city was in our reach. So as children and as we were growing older, the confidence that we gained in accessing a bigger area of the urban reach, either by walking to the nearby neighborhood shop or cycling and going to a park unsupervised by our parents, was much more than what our children are experiencing right now. And I feel the impact of these gated communities and the neighborhoods and the society is really playing on the confidence as well, because somehow I feel the children who are on the streets, or the ones who are not supervised by their parents very often as compared to our children, they develop a much more confidence level in facing the society and traversing or navigating the city. Whereas we compare our children who are always protected in this gated community, they play inside, they cycle inside the community. So how do you take those challenges of totally different worlds which the child is having right now?
In fact, what you're saying, Tanaya, is very, very valid. There are studies that have been done mapping. This is how children lost right to roam through the generations, and this was an article in the Daily Mail in UK, and it actually talks about a mother says, "Oh, I could at the age of 8, I could go to the swimming pool, which was half a mile away," and the grandfather says, "At the age of 8, I used to walk 6 miles to go fishing," and and then the son says, at the age of I can only walk till the end of the street, right? And so this is a very, very valid point, and it is back to mindset. It is back to how social conditioning, or how we today perceive or what we aspire for, and what these aspirations, the aspiration for individual space, aspiration for privacy, aspiration, and it is our aspirations that are translating and resulting in what our children are experiencing. It is not the children's doing at all, and you are very,
Yeah,
very right.
exactly.
Truly, it is not the children's thing, and that's why the question of, in my research at the moment, this other question that I am at is, when I am looking at urbanities, do I need to look at urbanities of small towns or not? And honestly, within for a single person, this sort of a deep I, alone I might not even be able to do it. But that is a very true fact. I myself, my in-laws, my father-in-law, and we go there often, is Haldwani, and that is a place in the course of my marriage, from a small foothill town, which was still a business center for the Kumaon region, has turned into a huge, bustling. Literally, it's an urbanized with like over the past 5 years, like drastically. Now, somebody might say COVID has happened, and now something else is going to happen, but I doubt it. I doubt it. I think it's people's aspirations are too strong here, and what we are aspiring for is something that we are not thinking a bit about, and again, a bias coming in. So I just want to maybe just map, I mean, just map everything. I don't know, map all these biases, map all that. It's impossible, but yeah, this is where I'm at. Very, very valid point. There's so many points to look at, actually.
Yeah. Thanks, Aruna, and all the best.
Great
Thank you,
point
Himani. I think
by
I talked too much.
Anaya. No,
Thank
no,
you.
not at all. We also have Professor Vasavara with us. Would he like to ask a question or make a comment?
Well, thank you so much. PhD in architecture is a very difficult proposition, and it is always full of, unknowns. And I would like to bring you back to your diagram, which is with the blue, blue sort of boxes. And I would only observe, I mean, I don't have any question, nor I actually question what you have done. But in terms of my own observation, I feel the diagram has to be seen just the other way. Where you end with unknown. In fact, you begin with unknown, and I think you go towards the known. And that is what I think is something which I would like to comment. The other thing is, your last statement is very valid because it talks about contexts and contextual conditions. And I don't find this from your references that you have provided now. So that is something, which I would really look into. I must tell you, I come from a city where there was a lot of sensitivity towards child development. And the city, as it grew in the beginning of 20th century, there was a typical kind of housing which came up. And it was known as a society, which was actually founded on the principles of a cooperative, where a group of people would own the land and they would build their houses. Now, in these societies, there was a provision for a park which always had places for children. Now, this was also a kind of carry forward of the consciousness of a very important family, which actually brought Madame Montessori in Ahmedabad. And she started, working on how ideally to somehow look after the development of a child, which was part of their family affair. But then that grew out into a movement in the city. I have personally designed a kind of, children's area. I would not call it a park, but an area, with provisions of the sensibilities, which a child would really look for. So this is another, thing which I feel you should somehow put in your sort of canvas as something, which provides best practices. And I'm sure there are many, many examples. And when you look at best practices, I think you can look globally. Yes. And there was one architect, Aldo van Eyck,
yes,
who has done tremendous work. And Amsterdam was a city which felt at a time that there was no place for children in the city. And then he was assigned to develop this kind of places for children in Amsterdam. And the kind of idea that he came up with were extremely brilliant, And then, of course, his orphanage, which is now under the threat of demolition. But this is something, where he talks about these issues, So I think for us, these are the kind of issues, which can give us some direction. And I think having these things on your board, then you can try to somehow synthesize this and bring your findings for some kind of new knowledge that you can add in our context. So these are some of the observations that I would feel, which may be pertinent. It is very difficult for me to comment right away because I think I have only known what you're doing for just about an hour. But it's a very interesting topic, very, very important for us and highly disregarded in our urban environment. So I think you have a very interesting subject, very potential in terms of adding some new values in the kind of practices that we are following. And I think if you really look at your last statement and bring in some kind of, actual observations from the context within, I think this can help. I would only say this much. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, Professor Vasavade. I think this is a very, thank you. I think this is really helpful because one thing is that gives me a little points to think deeply on the points that you have raised and other people have also raised. So makes me kind of look at those and maybe get some direction onto that. And I like this idea of unknown to known. I think I'm going to try this and diagram my research out and I do a couple of diagrams and see how this can pan out.
I
It's a
think
very
you have to simply turn the diagram 180 degrees, simple.
perfect.
Or
I think
you simply go backwards. You see, because going backwards is also, in a sense, examining history, which you have been talking about your grandfather and your father, and So I think either you simply go backwards, or you turn that diagram 180 degrees. Simple. The first three things that you have mentioned might need a little bit of reshuffling in terms of what comes first, investigation or something else,
yeah.
But otherwise, I think that diagram, if you simply mirror image, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. And yes, Alto Van Hike, I can never pronounce his name. In fact, I've visited with our students and we visited the parks and his very interesting play areas and how he passionately fought with the whole establishment. I will bring that into my research. Thank you for pointing that out. And yes, I think mapping of history is also another point, like you have raised the idea of society and corporative housing. I think that mapping of smaller neighborhoods would be also an interesting thought to bring into the
I
research.
think that is your backbone, because I think we always go from part to the whole.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think, unfortunately, even in Ahmedabad, there was such a progressive, tendencies in early 20th century, which actually lasted until almost 60s. But then 70s onwards, you see, the city has gone in the hands of, real estate and the builders. And I have seen successive destruction of these kind of common places. And the municipal corporation has sold this for commercial purposes, So at a point in time, the city had these kind of, provisions for all age groups, which have now completely demolished.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
sir, I was there. I was in Ahmedabad in 95. I worked
90?
at Doshi sir's place.
Oh, I see.
I was at Sangat. And
In
we
which
used to
year?
walk
Which year? Which year it was?
95 to 96, 96 and a half. So
90?
95, 95
Oh,
after
95.
my
Oh,
architecture.
I see.
So we Sangat was, and of course Sept, and yes, and it was even though we used to, you're right, the drive-in was one of the best places of as a social place that we used to go to, and yeah, so but I think this is very thanks a lot for these points. These are very poignant, and I think they will help me now refine the way to go ahead. Thanks a lot.
No, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Vasavra,
No,
for
my
all
pleasure.
those.
My
It's great
pleasure.
to have you join our proposition.
No, very kind.
Not at all. It is our pleasure. And what an enriching talk this has been. I'm so sorry, but we've really run out of time. I'm just going to quickly just see. I think Aruna, you've received a lot of, accolades from a lot of people. And I guess this is a topic that is highly neglected, as Professor Vasavra has said, and which many people have also mentioned in the comments. So thank you so much. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another proposition. It will be Kanupriya Deol from the School of Planning this time. And that will be next 2 Fridays from now. And we'll be sending out the links and posters well in time. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And have a wonderful
Thank you
day.
very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Really
you,
enriching
Aruna.
experience. Yeah.
It has been wonderful. Yes. Thank you.